I'm assuming that you agree with me. That was a poor performance from the United States. And that was, it was a performance that angered me. I was at the game, like you said, with Rob Stone and Carly Lloyd and Stu Holden. We were doing some promotion over what we're going to do this summer at Fox with Copa America and the Euros and everything. And you could just, it was palpable how frustrated we were watching this team, and how maddening it was in terms of a overall lack of urgency and ruthlessness and energy. And so when there's a game like this, obviously we're looking to assign blame. Well, there's plenty of blame to go around. But I think first and foremost, it starts with Gregg Berhalter. And the fact that this team showed up like this is a reflection, and a poor reflection, on Gregg Berhalter. Is it all his responsibility? No, ultimately the ball is kicked by the players on the field. But if you look, Mosse, through this team, very little was created in terms of attack. So much back passing, and as I said, just a real lack of urgency there. And if I go through this lineup, Matt Turner, I don't think he could have done anything on the goal. And obviously, you put yourself behind in the first couple of minutes. It's certainly not the way they drew it up, but it certainly can happen. But I don't think he could have done anything on the goal. There were those that said we should have, or Matt Turner should have saved that. But I don't think so. I think that's a point-blank shot, and I'm not blaming Matt Turner in that instance. Joe Scally's not good enough. Chris Richards is not good enough. Miles and Anthony were fine, although Jedi was a little, how do I say this? He wasn't as constant, and I guess as dependable as we have seen him in the past. And he's prone to lapses just like anybody else. I thought Yunus Musa actually had a poor game relative to what Yunus Musa is expected to do. Weston was interesting in terms of the change and him going out to the right back position. And he didn't have his usual impact on a game that he maybe wanted to have. Malik Tillman was forgettable. Timmy Weah could not find positionally where he actually wanted to show up on the field. And when he did find some room and actually was able to take players on, I thought he was at his best, but it was very, very few and far between those moments. Balogun, I know he's the incumbent, but he was out of sight, out of mind. Did very, very little. Christian Pulisic, I actually thought, had a decent game, in that there were times in the past where Christian Pulisic would have faded out of this game and his head would have gone down and you wouldn't have heard from him. And he, in a strange way, forced the issue time and time again. And look, he had 3 or 4 guys around him. So that's from the on-field perspective. And as I said, Gregg Berhalter deserves and is, I think, fairly being criticized for this overall performance. But he also deserves credit for making the changes that ultimately resulted in a win in a knockout type of scenario and in a tournament setting, albeit against a team that you should beat. But this is a Jamaica team that got a gift handed to them by the U.S. in the first couple of minutes and immediately went back into a bunker, into, parking the bus, low block, whatever you want to call it. And even the best teams in the world struggle to be able to break down a team that is basically defending for the rest of the game. All right, those are initial thoughts. People using this as a canary in the coal mine type of thing, or as, hey, this should signal the problems that I know you're feeling and that many others are feeling. And maybe this type of performance for a lot of people is justifying the feelings that they have relative to the Gregg Berhalter coaching this team.
Yeah, but let me address that for a second. People, they always project their feelings of Gregg Berhalter onto Matt Crocker. And if you're somebody that thinks that Gregg Berhalter needs to be removed right now, it's probably because you don't think he should have been rehired in the first place. So you're viewing it through that lens. You have a much lower threshold than Matt Crocker probably does for feeling like this has got to be it. Let's pull the plug on this now. You have to, if you want to have a realistic conversation about what needs to happen between now and the 2026 World Cup for Gregg Berhalter to not be coaching the team at that tournament, you have to put yourself in the mind of somebody who did rehire Gregg Berhalter, who clearly has a higher opinion of him than you do, who clearly likes the work he did in the previous 4 years. And so what does that person need to see to be convinced that you need to pull the plug on Gregg Berhalter and bring in a different coach? So if you want to have a serious conversation about it, you have to transport yourself into Matt Crocker's mind. For people who never thought he should have been rehired in the first place, to be talking about how, a disappointing win over Jamaica in a Nations League semifinal. Come on, isn't that the moment that shows everybody that he needs to be gone? I mean, that's just not realistic.
Yeah, I posted on X early today a lot of the things that you were talking about relative to Matt Crocker. For people who don't know, Matt Crocker is the sporting director, and what basically his first order of business. And I think the biggest decision that he has made in his capacity in his short term with the United States Soccer Federation was to, like you said, hire a men's coach, and in this case, rehire Gregg Berhalter. And he had every opportunity, and nobody would have said anything had he gone in a different direction. And yet, after this exhaustive type of, and I'm using it with quotes because I know a lot of people don't feel that it was exhaustive, search, he still came to the conclusion that for him going forward and relative to 26, because he mentioned 26 in everything that he said in the announcement, how this is the person that's leading us to 26, that Gregg Berhalter was still the best candidate. Now, can that change? Yes. But in doing so, Matt Crocker has to, in doing it, basically admit that he made a major mistake. Nobody likes to do that. And there are people out there, I'm sure, that would say, yeah, but that's the mark of a leader, is saying when you make a mistake, all right, I made a mistake, and then you go fix it. But I don't think that Matt Crocker looks at this as a mistake. And I don't think that the game yesterday is going to necessarily change his mind. If the U.S. were to really, really bomb out in the Copa America, and there were real problems that you saw in their performance, then certainly I think it would be warranted and fair. And I think Matt Crocker would look at it. But I do think that Matt Crocker thinks of this as a long-term type of project. And as I said before, if he had hired anybody else, nobody would have said anything. It would have been, yeah, all right, whatever. There was all the problems, and it's still a second cycle, and we talk about second cycles. But he went back to the well, and this is on him. And so I think he's going to give Gregg Berhalter every benefit of the doubt, a very, very long leash. All right, listen, we've talked a whole lot about what we saw, and there's a bunch of things. I know, Mosse, before we get to calls, did you want to focus on that goal, or you want to say that for later?
No, I'll do it now. A couple things. As soon as the clock hit 90, Dre Cordero said, we're going to play 4 minutes of stoppage time. And Paramount Plus, they threw up +4 on the screen. And then they immediately took it down. And 3 seconds later, they threw up +5. And then Jamaica was evidently upset about the amount of stoppage time that was played. And Dre Cordero, he brought Christina Uncle on and asked her about the stoppage time. And she made a big point of saying, well, there was this Bobby Reed sub during the stoppage time, and he took his sweet time getting off the field. And that's why it went from 4 to 5. And that had nothing to do with it. The Bobby Reed sub had occurred when it already said +5. Clearly, it was either Dre Cordero misspeaking or the Red Hat misspeaking when he conveyed that information to Dre Cordero, or maybe even the referee throwing up 4, but immediately changing his mind and saying, actually, it's 5. But it was never actually 4. It was always 5. So people need to understand that. And then on the 5, I mean, I said that was as close as you can come to losing a game without losing it. Blake had the ball in his hands at 94.50. And when he hoofed it up the field, if he had kicked it towards the sidelines and had it go out of bounds for a throw-in, the game would have been over, because by the time the U.S. threw it in and gathered themselves and went up the field again, the referee would have blown the whistle. The sequence of events that needed to happen there for Jamaica to concede a goal was incredible to me. Blake kicked this line drive that went straight to Tyler Adams, who headed it forward, and then Chris Richards, who had gone up the field, was able to step in front of a Jamaica player who should have gotten to it first, and he headed it across to Pepe, who headed it quickly to Reina, who one time dinked it over to Haji Wright, and next thing you know, in a span of 5 seconds, we went from the ball being launched to one side of the field to the U.S. attacking down the other end. And then the referee had to see how that attack was going to play out. And then there was some controversy here, because when Haji Wright squared it across Pepe, I went back and looked at it again this morning. It did look to me like Pepe was a half a step offsides in the box. All the Jamaican defenders threw their hands up. They couldn't believe the flag didn't go up, but the referee didn't call it. It goes out for a corner. As we've discussed recently on the pod, referees do not like to end the game on a corner, so they let him take the last corner, and the U.S. scored. So the U.S. did get a bit of an officiating break there.
Couple of things, all right? If you have to pick a moment that is the most benign against the United States, it would probably be corner kicks, given Christian Pulisic's inability, it seems, to hit anybody. And the irony is that's ultimately how they score. But that we are horrible on corner kicks.
And to be fair, Jamaica caught a break officiating-wise in the first half. There was a play where Tillman poked the ball away from Palmer, and it set the U.S. on a counter, and Balogun slipped it across to Pulisic in the box, and he should have won time, but he took an extra touch. But nevertheless, when he shot it, Latibo there deflected, and then the ball popped up, and Latibo there, it was an accident, but still, he clearly smacked it with his arm out of bounds. That should have been a penalty in my view. So the U.S. did get a bad call there, so you could argue it evened out at the end with the non-offsides on Pepe.
So I'm confused, Mosse. Are you wearing tinfoil or not? You know, I was with the CONCACAF people last couple of days. I saw Victor Montaliani. Obviously, they were all smiles in terms of getting a final that they want right now. But you know, in a game like that, come on.
Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, I think there should have been offsides on Pepe, but more of what I wanted to convey was just how much Jamaica screwed up that sequence. Yep. There is no way you're leading a game at 94-50, the ball is in your goalkeeper's hands, and the referee has indicated 5 minutes of stoppage time. There's just no way you can concede a goal in that situation. Your keeper has to know to kick it somewhere on the field where nobody is at, and it's going to take a few seconds for the team to gather it and go back up the field, and then the referee is going to blow the whistle. It was unbelievable how Blake managed to kick it into one spot where it went straight to the head of a U.S. player. And like I said, there was a sequence of headers where Jamaican players were slow to the ball, and the U.S. kept heading it forward, and then nice pass by Gio Reyna, and next thing you know, what happened. It was just unbelievable that Jamaica screwed that up.
You like that clip? Well, my State of the Union podcast drops twice a week right here on my very own YouTube page. The only way to stay up to date is to hit that subscribe button down below. Size the day, and see you soon.